Both carbohydrates and animal proteins are required for optimal fitness and performance. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today, but a quick reminder, if you guys will please click like down below, it'd be greatly appreciated. If you're not subscribed or following, please do so. And if you'll be kind enough to drop me a comment down below, I'd greatly appreciate that. And please feel free to tell me your own experiences here. Particularly if you're a serious athlete on that, I'd love to hear your take on it, whether you agree or disagree. But let's get over to the topic. All right. Yes, these are points of contention. And when I say this, I am not saying healthy fats are not useful. I'm not saying plant proteins are completely useless. So I want to be clear when I make these statements. I'm like, this is what we have to have. It's not a dogmatic statement. I am saying that this is what we have to be optimal. The research on this and the anecdote are both very, very clear on this. But that doesn't mean, for example, that I'm opposed to all plant proteins. It doesn't mean I think soy isn't useful in some cases. In fact, I think tofu can be a perfectly healthy food. I think it can have certain benefits. I obviously think healthy fats absolutely are critical and play a role. It could be helpful for health, controlling inflammation, all sorts of other stuff. So let's be clear on that. I'm not even saying that certain metabolic conditions aren't there that can create problems. But I think the problem that people realize whenever we bring up the carbohydrates are like, well, what about this medical condition? I'm like, so why does your disease state change things for everyone else? Number one. Number two, a lot of those disease states are reversible to some extent, like broken metabolic issues, issues like type 2 diabetes. I'm sorry, but the data is very clear, and plenty of doctors have shown repeatedly you can put type 2 diabetics on high starch diets and get them under control with weight loss, with resistance training, with exercise, and they can thrive again even on starch-based, glucose-based diets. It's been done over and over and over and over and over when they quit eating all the junk and they quit eating all the stuff that causes the insulin resistance. So, and occasionally people will again argue, well, what about type 1 diabetics? We're talking about someone born with an extreme metabolic condition. Has nothing to do with this conversation for 99.9% of the population. Just stop. All right. But that being said, the reality is, look at either of those other diet types, and it becomes very, very clear. You look at deep ketogenic diets, you look at vegan diets, people are unsuccessful as athletes when they do them. This should speak volumes, right? And I mean, the vegan is the worst propaganda ever. You guys remember the Game Changers? There are very few successful vegan athletes. There's such a small number, and most of them quit. So a lot of the people who are highlighted as having been super fit vegans and vegan athletes, they oftentimes built themselves doing other diets. They built themselves on animal proteins, and then they go vegan for a little while, and sometimes they stay with it, sometimes they don't. But generally, if they're still a successful athlete, they can't do it long. There have actually been more cases of people doing it, claiming for ethical reasons, and then they literally have to stop doing it because their injury rates go up, they lose their ability to perform at a high level. Right? Animal proteins are absolutely essential for optimal metabolic function and performance, tissue repair in humans. And whether you like it or not, whether you think it's morally right or not, is completely irrelevant to the fact. Like, your ideology doesn't change the reality of it. We need those high bioavailable proteins, and the more fit and more athletic you are, the more you have a need for them for tissue repair, for recovery, metabolic health, everything. All right, and again, even tendons. So that's the other problem you have also. It's not just muscle tissue, it's even connective tissue repair, keeping injury rates lower due to tendon health. It's kind of a big deal, guys. Collagen synthesis, it's relevant. And we see that happen. We start seeing those people start having injury rates. And I mean, you look no further than the world's strongest vegan. I personally had an argument with him on YouTube before he came over, and I clowned him. The world's strongest vegan has never made it to the world level in his sport, being strongman. He is a mid-tier competitor, and that's the best they can produce. And he consumes enormous, ridiculous amounts of supplements and vegan protein supplements, like mind-boggling amounts, just trying to be a mid-tier athlete. That actually shows the problem. Okay, that shows the problem, and that's Patrick. I think he's retired now. The same thing, ketogenic athletes. It's unsuitable. No athlete thrives on low carbs. You just can't. And so that's the point that we see. It is absolutely required for performance. And I'm not saying every athlete has to have ultra high carbohydrates. Some of them get enough to perform for their particular sport, for their training. They need that glucose to perform, and then some of them choose to fill it in with other healthy fats, and that does okay, but no one's doing ultra low carbohydrate as any serious athlete. And so therein lay the clues for everyone else. If this is what is required to be optimal in that environment, then it should make sense that if you want to be as fit as possible, you need to have that same mindset. Right? We need to be looking at it and saying, yes, we absolutely do need our animal proteins to optimize our own fitness. Because if athletes require it at the highest levels to optimize, you don't even have their genetic gifts oftentimes as those most elite athletes. How are you going to reach your optimal? Okay, especially we start factoring in, again, the metabolic health, the connective tissue, everything else on the animal protein side. Yeah, it's a big deal. Same thing, we start talking performance. Nobody is going to be at their most optimal in terms of performance, fitness, energy output, athleticism, and that is what fitness is. It's a big part of it. On too low of a carbohydrate, it's not happening. Now, that being said, now again, I'm not saying other stuff doesn't have its place. I'm not telling you, oh, you can thrive on nothing but, glucose and animal protein. There are definitely other things in there, and we should generally be eating whole food balanced diets. And I do think that we can benefit from obviously other things in there, healthy fats. Obviously, we want lots of vegetables and other stuff. And, there's going to be some plant proteins that do contribute. They're absolutely still going to contribute to what we're doing. So again, I'm not being dogmatic, but you do need a certain minimum threshold of those things. Okay, you do need a minimum threshold, and I'm going to go so far as to say that probably if you're barely getting your protein minimums to be optimal, which is again that 1.5, 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight, at least half of them better be coming from animal sources. Just realistically, if you're trying to minimize injuries, maximize performance, which again is part of being fit. Same thing on the carbohydrate end. Okay, so if you're going to minimize the amount of carbohydrates, well, I'm just going to consume enough to perform at the level I need to with my training and working out and other stuff, you dang way better be having some other quality calories in there to fill that gap, not garbage fats, but you need to be focusing on plenty of like plant source PUFAs and MUFAs, right? It doesn't need to be, hey, let's just knock down a bunch of saturated fat and other stuff. And that's the point I would make with all that.